Welcome to Nifty 50 Photographers, and welcome to 2023, and Happy New Year to you for all those who've been following me. This video I'm going to talk about 5 mistakes that beginners often make and how to avoid them. They're simple things that will improve your photography, and actually even some of us pros still make those same mistakes. And just very quickly, for those of you who have been watching this series, I'll give you a little update on my Sony camera. Well, I got it back. They received it on the 14th of December. I eventually got a quote out of them around the 22nd and made the payment. And I was really pleased to see it came back to me on the 4th of January. So they'd obviously worked on it over the Christmas break. So the turnaround, once I got the system going, was very good. Thank you, Sony. Anyway, let's get on to those 5 mistakes that beginner photographers often get sucked into and how you should avoid them. First mistake I see beginners make all the time is they put far too much trust in this LCD screen. They think that's showing them what they've taken, and it does, but just remember it's doing a few other things that actually might mislead you. First thing it's doing is it's converting your image into a JPEG. So if you're using it to check a shot you've just taken, bear in mind it's already done a bit of processing and turned it into a JPEG. Now the other thing is, you might have adjusted the brightness because it's a bright sunny day, so you've turned it up. Maybe you've forgotten that it's a dull day and it's still on its bright setting. And also the ambient light around you will make a difference. All those things are going to influence what you see on the back of that LCD. And the problem with that is it might mislead you into thinking you've got a perfectly exposed shot, or alternatively it might mislead you into saying actually you've underexposed it or overexposed it. You then retake the shot and find out actually maybe it was perfectly exposed to start with. So the thing to trust is your histogram. For those of you who don't know what a histogram is, I suggest you watch this video. The histogram will show you actually what the sensor has recorded. So what you're looking for is a nice, well-balanced curve in the middle of that graph. If it's too far over to the left, everything is dark because the left is shadows. If it's too far over to the right, everything is overexposed. And what you're particularly worried about is your highlights blowing. So trust your histogram, not your LCD. So make sure if you are reviewing your photos, have the histograms up as well, and then you can actually see what's going on. In fact, I use it pretty much all the time. I use it when I'm taking my photos, and I can see straight away if any of my highlights are blown or my shadows are too crushed. It's the best way of checking you've got your photo perfectly exposed. Then you can make a decision about whether you need to do bracketing or something else to help you get away from problems of over or underexposure. The second mistake I see that beginners make, and in all honesty it's a mistake I make myself quite often too, and that's rushing or just falling into sort of automatic pilot, if you like, and I don't check all my settings. And what typically happens is the day before I was doing a completely different type of photo. Maybe I was doing a long exposure landscape, and today I'm doing a bracketed interior photograph. Now for my long exposure landscape I probably had a very low ISO, maybe I was manually focusing and those kind of settings. But then I come along and do my interior photograph, haven't really bothered to check my settings, and find out actually it's in manual focus and I wanted autofocus. I wanted it set to take a bracketed shot, all things like that. So make sure you don't rush. Take your time before you start to take your photograph. Check all your settings are right. Is the focus set? Is the exposure set? Is your ISO set? Is your shutter speed set to the things you want them set to? And that'll get you out of trouble. Now sometimes the light's fading very fast, or it's an action moment and you just don't have time to check those settings. What I would try and do in those circumstances is think about planning your photography a bit further in advance. If you know tomorrow you're going off to watch the F1 or something, set your camera up the day before. Make sure the settings are right for taking sports action photography. Or similarly, if you're going off for doing a landscape or something, you can do the same thing. Just get your camera set up in advance, and when you get to the venue and you suddenly see that moment and you have to grab the shot, everything's set up perfectly already and you get that master shot. The third mistake I see, not only beginners, but again it's something we all do, is not taking a tripod. I think I often plan my photo shoots and I think, what gear am I going to need for that? And if I possibly can, I'll probably try and leave a tripod behind because I don't want to carry that extra, slightly awkward and bulky thing. And I'll guarantee you pretty much 99% of the time I regret not taking it. Because you get to the scene or the location you've chosen and realise, actually now I want to do a long exposure, or now I want to do a focus stack. I wish I had a tripod so I know my camera is going to stay static through those different exposures. Very easy to be lazy and not to want to lug it with you, but is it worth missing that vital shot? If you can, go out and buy yourself a really decent tripod, something that's lightweight, doesn't cause you too much pain to carry around. And if you want some tips on how to use a tripod, then check out my video here, some 7 tips to get the best out of your tripod. The fourth mistake I see beginners make is not spending enough time doing the framing and composition of your photograph. What commonly happens is you've seen an amazing photograph on Instagram taken by somebody else, and you know the location and you want to go there and recreate it yourself, and you do. You stand in the right spot, you get the shot you wanted. But actually, had you thought about moving around a bit, maybe you could find a better composition. Maybe you could find a more interesting shot, particularly in some of the more cliched landmarks. Everybody's going to try and take the same thing. There's a good example here. This is a statue called Venus and Cupid, and it's on the seafront at Morecambe. Now classically everybody would take this shot, but actually what I did was I moved around a lot and I thought, how can I make my shot stand out and be different? And one person even complimented me on the final image that I took like this, that it was the best shot they'd seen of that statue. And it was simply because I was prepared to move my feet, I was prepared to lie down and just look for a unique and interesting angle that would make a better shot. I also thought carefully about the framing. What parts of the sculpture could I use to bring into the frame that would make a more interesting composition? So next time you're taking a photo like that you're trying to reproduce something, just spend some time walking around, try out different angles, even play around looking at different options with your phone before you get your camera out, and it'll give you some hints and clues as to how you can make a really interesting photo. And the fifth and final thing I wanted to say is, don't be lazy. This is a mistake that we all make because it's maybe you're stuck behind the tripod, it means walking out and moving something, or it's just the faff of actually making the extra effort to make the shot better. Now what I mean by this is, if you're taking a simple shot of some coffee or something, then what else could you add into that picture to make it more interesting? Maybe you need to go and get some coffee beans or some other additional items to drop into the photo that make it look more interesting. Often I find for me it's when I'm doing property shots and I get into the room, I get myself crouched in the corner, and then I realise actually there's some unwanted item in there that I don't want in the shot. That means getting up, moving the item and going back again. It requires a bit of effort, and it's a debate goes on in my head. Is it worth the effort of me going to make that change? And I guarantee you 100% of the time it is. Your photo will look better. So do make the effort to look around, make sure things like trees aren't coming out people's heads, there aren't unwanted objects spoiling your shot, or have you told the story with your photograph? What could you add to make it a better shot? If you do those 5 things, I guarantee that you'll be taking better photographs. Some of them will come naturally to you very quickly and you won't even have to think about them. If you want to watch something next that will improve your photography, check out this video on a simple system that will help you to take better photos. I look forward to seeing you next time.